Okay, so this is the bracketology we have now, and this is the remix of it. We have 24 teams, obviously. TBT has announced that. And we're going to call this the Battle Royale because there's a lot of teams that really, really need to be in this that aren't going to make it. So understand 64 to 24 is an absolute just bloodbath of teams. And Vince, it was really hard, wasn't it, picking these teams?
Yeah, no, this was brutal. I think obviously on paper, when you see the teams and mentally you can prepare for 64 to 24, but when you start to really put pen to paper or logos to slides, it was a tough task. And so, yeah, I'm excited to get to it and see how things shook out.
Quick note to our viewers, too. Normally, we have a way to do the production assistant, so we're going to be a little looser today because we're actually not able to do it right now with slides for some reason. So here we go. Same assumptions. Charge, you walk us through the assumptions one briefly again.
Yeah, so the assumptions we're using is 24 teams. Everything that we're hearing, best intelligence, is that the first 8 seeds are going to get a first round bye. That means 16 teams are going to be playing those first round games and feeding into that. So once we start pushing out the slides, you're going to have 4 pods of 6 teams, and pretty much we'll show a straight seed of 1 through 24 and what those possible matchups could look. We always say we're using the best information available, so things are changing by the minute. If you've been tuning into TBT this week, it's been a crazy week with teams jumping in, teams jumping out, players in. It's just been incredible. So we'll use our best information available and give it a good stab at it.
And Charge is really smart. Me, not so much, but we'll get by anyway. The teams are basically picked on a couple of different things. And again, we'll go through this, but roster quality, a team like Team Himes always brings a strong quality fan base. So a team like Van Hines Army, really great fan base. Reliability, the primetime players always show up, always play hard. Narrative, always the Express, a great story. So you need to at least tick. I mean, at 24, you got to tick all 4 boxes, to be honest with you. You got to become correct. And we're going to get right into this. We're going to start with Pod A. And one thing, there's only one seed line that didn't change, and we're talking about the defending champs of Carmen's Crew. Always loaded, always bring the best athletes out of Ohio State. The first team to knock off OE. They're coming back for more. And even though it may not be in Columbus now, we don't know where it's going to be yet, but anywhere they go, they bring a nation of fans, a total home court wherever a Big Ten team plays. And they would play in this bracket the winner of the 16-seeded War Tampa. Friends of the Pod, Tampa 20, finally leaned into the association they were starting to become, and they are basically the Auburn alumni team. And I love this blended move. I think it's a great way to really get fans excited. Tampa, the Auburn nation is huge. I think it's a really, really great move. And they went down 1 seed line. That's not a big deal. They would be playing the Stillwater Stars. It was one of our bigger droppers. They fell 8 seed lines since our last bracket. And they actually didn't do anything wrong. They have the same team, quality players like Phil Forte, Nash, great team. But the bracket's so deep, we had to kind of rejigger some teams. And they were one of the ones that kind of suffered from a seeding standpoint. Charles, let's talk about the right side of this.
Yeah, so then number 8 seed, we have the Golden Eagles of Marquette. And this one I'm really high on. On my personal bracket, I have them at number 3. I know Hayner's looking to see a little more of the roster come together, but everything I'm hearing, we're going to see the core of next year, possibly a familiar face from the past rejoining that team. And this is going to be a powerhouse team. I think when you look at the top 4 seeds in this
I want to see Dwayne Wade. He is retired. I want to see Dwayne Wade.
That's one of those ones. I know Josh and Jake were teasing some news. I've seen some people online want to see Dean Wade, and Overseas Elite's probably going to have some really big breaking news. So it should be interesting to see what that breaking news is. But the Golden Eagles are going to take on the winner of number 9, Florida TNT, and number 24, Team Brotherly Love. Yeah, so love both of these teams here. Obviously, Terry, Florida TNT has just put a powerhouse team together down there in Florida. And the guys from Team Brotherly Love, this is one of these teams where I don't think they get enough recognition for as good as they are. Once all said and done, the top 5 teams of all time are going to be in the tournament. You know the Carmen's Crews, the Overseas Elites, the Golden Eagles, Bayheims. But Team Brotherly Love, between them this last year and the Talladega Nights, has won 75% of their games. So to see them at 24 is just ridiculous. That's where we have our 24th ranked team, seeing how they won 75% of their TBT games the past couple of years. So just really, really deep bracket. And a couple comments on the other side. Carmen's Crew, very, very solid. And Matt from War Tampa, like I said, these guys, if they put up a good show in TBT, definitely in the running for GM of the year. I didn't mute them, so sorry, Matt. I had to mute you. There was just way too much War Tampa hype going on. So congratulations to you and your team and what you guys have accomplished. So
See, what
Hey,
you
Nick,
don't
let's see
know,
what,
you're
okay.
a dirty Yankee. You don't know about the fact that SEC football type schools like Auburn just have need. I mean, you live in Ohio, so you have the Ohio State fans, but SEC fans are crazy. So they're also going to have that home field, a home court advantage when they go. And I think what's notable about our bracket falling down a little bit is Florida TNT, which is just loaded, by the way. They're loaded, but they moved one spot down in Bracketology, and that one spot's a doozy because they went from the 8th seed to the 9th seed, which means they'd have to play a play-in, which is crazy. So, and Brother Love is a regional champ. Last team in won a region last year. That tells you just how ridiculous this field is. Let's start with the next pod. Team Hines was actually one of our bigger risers. They went up a couple spots, and that was more, I think, a correction on my part. I had them a little lower earlier, and I still want to see more of the roster, but they're always going to come correct. I mean, Hines, Cletus, loaded roster. Everline Drive, Let's Drive, always a great team. We hope to have Matt on soon, friend of the pod. Always a talented team, and the fact they fell 3 spots has less to do with them and more to do with some new teams entering. Men of Mackey, the Purdue alumni. We're going to have them on hopefully next week. We have it scheduled. They may not bring us on after seeing a 9-spot drop. Again, less to do with them. Their roster's only at 6. They've teased some major announcements. This is a team that I think is pretty safely in despite their seed. And I have a feeling they're going to shoot up these rankings next time I do this once they start adding a couple more players. Because we're hearing there's some great big news coming out of the Purdue alums. In charge, what do you got on the right?
Yeah, so coming in at number 5 is the Volunteers. So, they dropped 3 spots, but that's really nothing to do on them versus what we had to drop in there. So obviously I dropped in Overseas Elite at 2 and Golden Eagles at 3. That Bayheim's team's really tough. And so for them to be at a 5, you dropping 3 spots is definitely not a
No
knock on
disrespect.
them. Just an amazing team, and just continues to talk about how deep they are. And they're going to play the winner of 12 and 21. So we got Team Challenge ALS, which just, we spoke about these guys a number of times. They've made some really nice improvements with Branch and Rice. Great team, and they're going to be taking on Possibly if the seedings shake out the way we think they are. Heard that. So we just had Ant on our podcast the other day, and he's probably cringing that I didn't move them up a few spots. And but these guys really improved their roster. They got the who's who of Marshall over the past few years, and they've added some great guys outside of Marshall for some size and some defense. And they're going to be a tough out, and definitely don't want to take those guys on early. But one comment, Eberline looks amazing to me. Even though they didn't move up in the rankings, this is one where I kind of have all the strong non-alumni teams in this kind of bulk of the 9 through 13 range. But when you hear guys like Dusty Hannah's playing for him, Johnny O'Brien, Josh Majette, I mean, this team is crazy good. Plus the JPs and some of the people we've talked about on the previous podcast. I see these guys moving up a little bit once things start to shake out down the road.
It's just a testimony to just how bad the math is, because like Eberline is like a top 4 team in a lot of levels, and we have them at 13. It's just these teams are so good. I mean, literally any team in this bracket can come out with the money. So it's just crazy how deep this field is.
Yeah, and I am peeking at the comments, and yeah, Matt, we did drop you 3, but I see you moving back up. So just bear with us. I still think you guys
Are
can
you
have a
seeing
couple
the
more.
YouTube comments? I'm doing the
Yeah, I got
slides.
it on my phone on the side here. So
Oh, cool.
yeah, if
Excellent.
I
That's
see
perfect.
anything, I'll jump in and make sure we
Yeah, Matt, we
acknowledge
love
it. But
you. We're definitely
okay.
we want you up, but the reality is it's just such a deep bracket.
I
Speaking
see
of
at
deep,
least one more ad and possibly 2 coming from those guys. So it should
oh,
be
absolutely.
good
I mean,
stuff.
let's drive. They're always going to have a solid team. And again, like the math, we're halfway through. This is just an insane number of teams. And we're starting our 3rd pod. And we're going to start with, again, you're bringing in the 4-time champs, Overseas Elite. We added them to the bracket. They've announced, they've teased that they're coming back, because they really are teases. But when you win 4 times, you're allowed to tease as much as you want, to my understanding. Speaking of new teams, the money team comes in. It's really the reloaded Fredette squad. Really a lot of talent there, backed by an interesting celebrity in Floyd Mayweather. I have some thoughts on that. I'll keep them mostly to myself. And I'm an Illinois alum, so this one's always nice for me. The House of Pain. We'd love to have on the pod. One thing we haven't really tried to contact, but I am an MARC graduate of Illinois, so I'm definitely rooting for them in this game. We have them at 18, dropped a few spots. We started re-looking at that sort of middle of the bracket. And again, such quality, but the reality is Illinois still needs to make a couple moves to move up. And I think they will. I think they have a really good roster, but a couple more moves will push them a little higher. In charge, on the right, what are you seeing?
On the right, we have number 7, Red Scare. So they added a little bit of depth this week in Lowry, but you seen their team, good core from last year, adding a lot of youth. And so solid number 7 seed keeps them in that top 8 in that bye. And they're going to take on the winner of 10 and 23, which is Best
Ooh.
Virginia down 6. And so this one here, it's once again just a stockpile at home. Really high on Best Virginia. When we did this, they still had 3 roster spots to fill. They announced Page, Staten, and Myers today. So these guys they're going to be solid, and they're hoping obviously to get in that top 8 once the TBT selection committee looks at those final rosters and see where they land. And they could possibly be taken on Sideline Cancer. And you guys know the story behind Sideline Cancer, really big supporter of what they do. And I know they still have at least 2 or 3 roster spots to fill and looking to make some big moves as well. So this is a solid pot here. And overseas elite, everything I'm hearing, that core is coming back from last year plus some. So this is the one team that obviously no one's going to, look past them, but this is a team that could be the best team they've put out as 4-time champions. That's a big statement, but I'm hearing really big things from the names coming out of there. And I probably put Money Team a little bit too low after I really got to digging into the rosters today. I know you were a little higher on them than I was, but this team with Jordan Crawford and better, and Goodlock, Devin Williams, staring across the way at West Virginia on the slide, jump ship and headed over there. So this is going to be a really intriguing team, and I think they're going to make some waves as well.
It's really interesting too, because like Best Virginia sticks out to me, and the reason they moved down is I think I moved them down on mine a little bit more because you and I I had them a little higher, and it's not even a disrespect. They have got a great squad, and the way they play too, if that sort of pressing, aggressive defense, they're a nightmare matchup. So even at a 10, they can walk out for $2 million. It's not even a slight. They can still rampage through this tournament, no problem. Just press people into submission. Honestly, any comments yet that we need to address?
No. Jacob was talking about Eberline and Challenge ALS could possibly be on a crash course again, and it really wouldn't be a TBT without that ALS Eberline matchup.
Oh, yeah.
They always seem to be 2 of the premier teams in the tournament, and always seem to be in the same bracket and kind of playing through each other. And definitely one of those matchups I look forward to every year. So I hope this year is no different.
Yeah, and so this is 75% of the field. Keep in mind at the end of this, we are going to actually publish on the chat the Zoom call-in number. So if you guys want to join us, you're quite entitled to. We can chat and have a good time. If you guys want to talk about your teams a bit, make it a little more interactive, because it is still, last time I checked, your team's your tournament. We're doing our last pod. And the leader of this, Boeheim's Army, down 1 spot. And I think they're okay with that, because, they're down 1 spot to a 4-time champion. I don't think they're going to fault that. I live with a Hughes fan. My girlfriend's a Hughes fan. Belby's been on here. Great guy, great team. What intrigues me about them is because they have shooting everywhere. They have long shooters everywhere. And you have guys like Trish and Gillian and Devendorf at the top, kicking to Dante Green and Nuad, kicking to Nichols in the corner, and then having Leiden as a stretch 5. They can do a 5-out offense and just stretch people to a breaking point. So they might be my favorite to win the whole damn thing just because of the shooting. There's just so much of it. And they would play the winner of Big X. Big X, actually, and hopefully Andrew gets on with us. We're going to be interviewing him, I think, right after this, hopefully. So, Andrew, shout out. Your team looks really solid. We moved him up 4. And that was more my mistake. I had him too low. The more I dug in, they've got a really quality squad. And they would play friend of the pod, Power of the Paw. Really high-quality squad. The fact they're down at 19 is kind of a testament to how deep this field is. And they've made some really big moves. They've added a lot of beef, a lot of good quality players. That Clemson mindset really will make that Big X Clemson alum game a real just physical game. Boeheim will be thankful they might beat up each other a little bit in that game to face them. In charge, what are you on the right?
Yeah, so coming in at number 6 is that Team Washington team. So these guys have been solid right from the beginning in regards to their roster. They added Terrence Jones, which is ridiculous. The guy can just take over a game and do a little bit of everything. So that adds just gigantic for them, and just incredibly deep team. So deserving of that number 6. And they're going to take on the winner between the 11 and 22, Team Heartfire. So that's kind of been that team that really catapulted recently. They made the TBT panel top 10 last week. So interesting to see what the top 10 panel is going to look like this week, as we have more teams that are eligible, have that 7 or more players, or the 5 or more players, I believe, is what they were using for their status. So Isaiah Austin, some Baylor guys, some Michigan State guys. So really solid team right there. Taking on the number
The
20.
last team.
last team we're talking about in the bracket, Iowa United. And so, yeah, definitely another friend of the Zoomcast. Dropped down 10 spots for us this week. And full transparency, I did drop Iowa out of my top 24, which is shocking to me, especially after I had them as the number one seed. And some of the trends I've seen just from the power rankings and things out there is, the alumni teams are definitely getting a lot of juice. The Illinois, the Purdue's, some of the top non-alumni teams are going to be there. So I think this is going to be one of those teams that hopefully I'm not shaking my head at the end and surprised that they fell that low. But, this is one that, full disclosure, it's so tight. And it's just another example. I think that team's so deep of, how many teams are competing for a handful of spots on that bubble. Couple comments on the other side. On your side, Big X, I put them at number 9 on my personal bracket. I just think this team is going to be phenomenal this year. Caleb Wesson obviously is the big news since the last time we spoke on the podcast, and Power to Palm much improved. Boeheim's 4. I think TBT put this graphic up there. 48 players on their roster right now were former first-round picks. So I mean, it's hard to argue with something like that. But just loaded teams in this pod.
I want to touch on the Iowa United thing too. Like, I think they're safely talent-wise in, but I think the thing about this whole selection process, and by the way, shout out to the team, Dan and John and Jake and Josh Brown for really putting together a great tournament. They do a great job, and all the other people there. But we understand it is also kind of a business, and kind of they want to put on a show. So it won't only be talent gets you on fan following, notoriety, et cetera, will have something to do with it. I think Iowa United is clearly, to me, a top 24 talent team. If they get squeezed out, it will just be sort of a numbers game. It's not that they don't belong. So we still have them in, and we're hoping that they can hold on. That 10 points drop has a lot to do with sort of more about the trends of what we're hearing from like how this may work. I think that's pretty accurate. So Charles, let's talk about some things we learned. We got the new teams in. And by the way, before I get into this also, we will be taking callers. And if you want to join the Zoom, after we're done the chat, we'll close out with our discussion, and we'll actually post the Zoom link in the YouTube chat if you want to call and say hi. The new teams in, we added 3. And we got the defending champs, or not the defending champs, but the 4-time champs overseas elite in at 2. Golden Eagles coming in at 8. I have them lower than Charge, and not because they're not a top team. They're obviously a top team, but I want to actually see the roster before I rank them any higher than I had. I assume when I see the roster, they'll move up a great deal from where I have them. And the money team, again, quality team, former Fredette team with a somewhat interesting guy backing them. And the teams that fell out, Charge.
Yeah, so the teams that fell out, and I know they're watching right now, and so be gentle on us. Armored Athlete, as painful as it is, Jackson Underdogs, and Gale Nation. And these are, once again, some of these teams, I just hope I'm wrong about it. I don't want to be right about these things. And a couple of things we talked about, I think, the alumni teams, with it only being 24, are going to take up a core piece of the spots. I have Jackson in the past, TBT has always brought back this goes back to fan voting, where if you were the top 4 to top 8, depending on the format, you were automatically in for the next year. So I think Jackson Tennessee Underdogs is going to end up being in this tournament. But then if you go back, who are you going to take out to add another team? And, they got Barford, who can lift them high. I just don't think they have as much depth, but I'd expect to see them back. And Gale Nation, I mean, that would be a crime if these guys weren't in. They played some of the most exciting games in TBT history. Just a lot of really good games. They had Machado this week, and it's just a deep field of teams that we're looking at here.
I think it's interesting what you mentioned, because these are all quality teams. And by the way, if you're on this slide, those bottom 3, and the slide we're about to show you, at 32, it's a no-brainer. And honestly, at 64, these are all upper half teams. So there's no slight. These guys are just getting caught in numbers. And I think the underdogs, correct me if I'm wrong, because I've been kind of doing the graphics, or are you doing the splits? I think the underdogs are the team you had in, I had out, and Armored's the team I had in, you had out, correct? Is that the split we had? Because we were
yes.
That was the split. Okay, so the deal with the underdogs is I think they should get in, by the way, bluntly. Like, Barford's incredible. They went from an 8 and won the whole region in Memphis last year, beating my favorite team, Bluff City, which always makes me cry a little. But the reality is, like, I looked at the roster, and we had to actually look at the online rosters. They still only officially have 2 players. They're not even eligible right now. Barford's not even on the page right now. Now, let's be clear, Barford kind of created the team. So the reality is, like, if he plays, they're probably in. But when you're looking at 24 spots, you have to take those things into account. And that comes up with our next slide. And by the way, Armored and Gale Nation, like you said, like, them being out's criminal. But at 24, crimes are going to happen, honestly. I hope I'm wrong about all these. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, Hayner did have Armored Athlete at 17. So that's where we flipped. I have Iowa out as well, but so I got Jackson in. He's got Armored Athlete in. I have him out, and just to kind of reiterate that point, it's just so many spots that are just going to be taken up by alumni team, and what's kind of that core non-alumni team.
Sure.
Some of these specialty teams like the Money Team and Team Heartfire. It's just I'm glad I'm not sitting at the table at the TBT selection committee, because that is just
There
a
are no
tough
bad
call to
teams.
make.
There's no bad teams. This is the thing. Like the TBT community routinely puts out incredible basketball up and down the bracket, and the Zoom account sort of did the whole Cinderella thread yesterday to prove that point. There's been teams that have been double digits or high digits before that have just rampaged in this tournament. Talladega Nights, primetime players. And at 24, it's not a discredit if you're not in. I mean, there's so many quality teams that won't make it. It's almost a thing. It means 2021 is going to be fantastic, is what that means. The biggest risers. Hardfire moved up 6 spots. Big X, and I think that was kind of both of us. Big X moved up 4. That was almost me just respecting them more. That was more me. And when Andrew comes on, they can yell at me because I was the one that disrespected them by having them lower. And Team Hines, I think, just moved up a couple spots purely from like some motion at the top. They're basically really the same seed area. The biggest fallers. You want to comment on why, Charge?
Yeah, Iowa, we talked to death, with that one. That's probably the toughest one, like I said, because I did have them, and I still believe that their talent is there. Just the way the flow is going right now, it's a tough squeeze. A couple of the alumni teams, I think we've got some of the non-alum strong teams moving in. The other 3 teams that we talked about, overseas elite, Marquette, and Team Fredette have moved in. And so, yeah, these are kind of minor moves. Obviously, there's more fallers than risers from a number perspective, just because, we added 3 teams in. But these are all steady, good teams that are going to, be in business.
You get into this tournament, you can walk out with the checks, or excuse me, the Zell. I don't want to piss off Zell again because we did it from the account.
Yeah,
The Zell. Bubble teams. Now let's be clear. And before I even tap this slide, I want to be clear. We're going to show a few bubble teams. If you're on this slide, you're still really on the bubble. There's teams that aren't on this slide that didn't make our 8 top bubble teams that we still are under consideration. We'll mention them verbally. This is kind of where we shook out with our bubble teams, the teams that we think are at the top of the bubble. And I'll talk about the top 4. We already beat to death kind of Armored Athlete. I think they're in. Charge that amount. We both think they're quality enough. That's not the point. That's just the numbers game. Gale Nation, we're going to have them on, I think, this week. I'm really excited. It'll be a great interview. I've actually seen them play live in Brooklyn. They're a really quality team. One of my favorite TBT stories involves them at the end of a game. The underdogs, we talked about that. That's the one Charge has, and I have out purely on a numbers game and purely because they don't have the roster official yet. And Aftershocks is interesting because they're a host when it was 8 regions, and the quality of the Aftershocks program, what they do with Wichita State is incredible. So like them being out would also, again, sense the trend here, be a crime. But the reality is, like, we haven't heard anything from their social media since 325. It's been almost 3 months since they said anything, 2.5 months. And I'm really curious if they're still invested on a regional host. It's interesting because we haven't heard anything. They get in if they want to, probably. They can get their team. I think they definitely have a case. Charge, talk about the bottom a little bit.
Yeah, the bottom, and these are really no particular order. I mean, when you look at these teams, you can interchange it. But 4-win champs and Jimmy V, I think these 2 guys have hustled their butts off lately. Same thing with Armored Athlete, Gale Nation. You're seeing their rosters coming together. You're seeing some really big moves, some strong moves. So when I look at that page on the 8th, the 4 on the left-hand side just, scream out to me that, there's something with this tournament going down to 24 that you have to look at these guys. But Fort Wayne and Jimmy V just doing some really good things. Then obviously Louisiana United, friend of the Zoom cast, American, and I mean those are my guys here in Northeast Ohio. I want to see those guys in, but you never know. And this slide here just is why I take offense sometimes to statements that going to 24 teams at the tournament means that the bad teams are gone and the bad teams are weeded out. I heard that statement this week, and that just really, really head scratcher to me how that statement was made, because you look at this slide, Armored Athlete, you can see that they're the 7th best win percentage, and thanks, Jared, for putting that out there. One of the historically phenomenal teams of the tournament. Fort Wayne made deep runs and, came in the last minute. Jimmy V's, these guys are hustlers, Yale Nation, Jackson Underdogs, Louisiana United. I mean, these are all teams that are just crazy good. And, with, different years, if we had 24, we'd have never seen Jackson, Tennessee make a run to the 8. So, these are just phenomenal teams. And, obviously, TBT selection committee has a lot on their plate to get this figured out. Obviously, there's some guys we definitely like personally and think their teams are better than what might be in there in a couple of alumni situations. But, obviously we talked about the criteria and some of those fan bases and the watchability when you go on ESPN, who's going to tune in to what is a big, big factor with this thing.
Couple of notes too. I mean, pissing off Jimmy V, I think, is basically the secondary use of this podcast because we had them on. They were great guests, by the way.
Yeah, good guys.
And great guys, and they have a quality team. And I think they'd be offended if we actually put them in the bracket. To be honest with you, like you got to keep disrespecting us.
I'm a little worried Vinny's going to come look for me one of these days.
Vinny's the man. Vinny's the man. Vinny's going to kick my ass, though. Well, you live in Ohio. I'm right across the river. He's going to cross the Verrazano Bridge and beat my ass in Brooklyn.
Don't mess with Vinny.
Yeah, come to this apartment. I'll be out of it in 2 weeks. Fort Wayne's coming on the show this weekend, I think, to talk to us because they're really making some moves. We're going to talk to Tyrant again soon. Gale Nation's coming on. And let's talk about some teams that even aren't on here. We just want to give a few shouts briefly. D3 is a team that really needs to be in the mix here. Who else we forget? We're fitting D3. Brennan White.
Yeah, that's the one that I really think Brown and White need some serious eyes on them. And once again, it's like, okay, well, who do you take out to look at Brown and White? But with them adding Posley, I mean, Posley's just, phenomenal team. They got a great fan base and up there in Olean. And I think, team with Posley and some of the top players from Brown and White to look at. I think they started a little late on getting their announcements in, and I think if they would have gotten some buzz a little bit earlier and some players early, maybe a different position. That's just my opinion. But I really want to see Brown and White, especially I'm a Western New York guy. I grew up there before moving to Ohio, so love to see these guys sneak in. And then you already mentioned D2, or no, you mentioned D3, but D2's kind
both
of
of them, just both of them.
Yeah, I mean they've done some really good things and represented themselves well in the tournament. Team 23 historically.
Yeah, we want to mention Team 23. They're definitely a team that we know they're probably under consideration. They didn't make the slide. We know that Michael's got a really good squad coming out of California, and they're always in contender. They've won lots of games at TBT, so them being in would not surprise me in the least. So here's the Team 23. Always got to shout out Kimchi because otherwise I think they won't love us anymore.
Daniel
D3, D2. D3,
but yeah,
D2.
I mean, that's just the thing. This just shows how easy this is. I mean, last episode we went even deeper. So there's a lot of other teams that I just
We're not doing it this week. Yeah.
We just can't do it for the sake of time here. And the reality is TBT selection committee's getting really close to cut time, and I'm sure their blackboard or whatever they put it on, or whiteboard, I guess.
I used stickies.
We used blackboards in my era, but I'm sure they got some fancy.
You are like a million years old.
So, I can't imagine how tough it is. So, if we didn't mention you, nothing but love for you, a lot of respect for the GMs and good teams. Let me stress that again. Good teams run really deep in the TBT community, and it's going to be interesting to see.
It's so hard to pick at 64. And again, like John, Dan, the guys, Jake and Josh, and the guys we've spoken to, they do a great job. So I don't envy them. This is going to be so hard. So I've never felt any sympathy toward the NCAA selection committee until I started doing this with you, and this is actually made me feel a little better for them. Okay, so just here's the field that we think it's going to look like, and we're just going to bring them all up in sort of a line. Some things that stick out. Charge, anything here stick out to you first off? Like what's just kind of hits you besides the depth?
I just hate it. I hate it. Definitely we talked about, Dan and John and Jake and Josh and, all the good folks over at TBT. But the number one thing is safety. There's, just no way they can do 32, 48, 64, whatever number you want to do, and these guys put extensive, exhaustive research into, what was going to work, how we're going to test, how they're going to quarantine, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's just painful to see. I'm excited because the one point that was made, I mean, these games are going to be competitive. I mean,
we're
going to see just incredible games, right from the beginning, first game to the championship game of high caliber, high potent teams. So I think the watchability this year is going through the roof. So as much as it's going to hurt, obviously the GM's blood, sweat, and tears all year long. They don't just start, planning a couple weeks before the tournament starts, but, blood, sweat, and tears all year long. And then, to not make this field of 24 is going to hurt. And, a lot of these folks, we've gotten to know over the years and really pulling for them. And, some cases I think I feel pretty good about, where my selections were, but I really hope I'm wrong in a couple of these cases.
Well, I think another thing to mention too is and I think this is a credit to the people that do TBT and really the community of the teams and GMs and players and fans is it's not a 1-year project. This is a one-off. This is just a weird year. This has been a bit of a historically disastrous year in human history. So if you don't make this field, I'd walk it off because there's 40 teams that belong in this tournament, not 24. There are 40 teams more that belong in this. And the reality is if you didn't make the TBT 2020, that's fine. I wouldn't even take it personally because just remember, teams that didn't make it this year would have had a chance to win the whole thing. And TBT 2021, because this is a multi-year endeavor they've created. And it's a wonderful event every year. So this isn't over after this year. I encourage any team that doesn't make it to remember that we're going to be doing this podcast. We decided pretty much the whole year. So we're going to keep telling the story the whole year, mainly because it's fun. And there's a community that we enjoy being a part of. And these teams need to come back and ask for more because just because they didn't make this year, because it's just such a weird year, doesn't mean that the future isn't bright for teams that didn't make it this year. There's still a lot of games to be played in TBT 2021 and onward. And I guess on that note, I'm going to go ahead and actually go ahead and open up the conversation. So what I'm going to do, talk for a couple minutes so I can just not look like an asshole for a minute.
Go ahead. Yeah,
and I'm going to share the link.
Yeah, go ahead and share that link. And while he's finishing up, just thank everyone for tuning in. Good folks out there in the chat. If you guys have any questions on the YouTube live, go ahead and put those in the comments. Love to, answer those. If you have any questions, comments, and Andrew's going to drop into the chat the Zoom link. So if you want to jump on and talk about your team, you want to make some comments. What did we get right? What did you get wrong? You want to pick on Hayner's hat, we can do that too, so it's
hat's awesome. Screw you,
it's
people.
his Memphis hat, so he has to do that. But
we'll see if we get any calls. I can see the chat. If not, we'll log off. But so it's been fun doing this. Charge, you have a team that you really think outside maybe the top 10 that we had that you think could win the whole thing? They all could, but yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, I like those guys right in the middle. I really like ALS, Eberline, and Big X. I think those are just some teams. And like I said, we'll have hopefully Dakich on here in about 25 minutes in our regularly scheduled Zoom to TBT. But
which we won't do live. This is too much of a pain in the ass.
Yeah, I think Eberline and Big X are very similar. They just got some great younger talent, but they're not green behind the ears. They're very young, very athletic, but at the same time, some NBA experience, some TBT experience, some overseas experience. And I think those teams are just put together really, really well for a TBT run. So those are guys, and ALS obviously a little older, a little more chiseled, but they made incredible ads. And so those are kind of the teams outside the top 10 that just look really talented to me right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's really interesting seeing trying to cut this down because I can't imagine a harder gig than this. And it's weird because we're all dealing with all these challenges in the real world right now, and I'm really grateful for the TBT community. I won't even lie to you. There's a disease. I live in New York City, so I'm in the center of the pandemic, and this is keeping me a little bit sane. Having these conversations has been a godsend to me. Just for me not having to hey, Matt's got a question because he's too lazy to log in. Favorite player looking forward to watching in TBT 2020? Charge, you got a favorite player?
I gotta stay with my roots, so we gotta stick with the Charge guys, and so obviously we'll wait and see how many get in there, but Matt's a very smart and wise man out there, and of course he picks up JP McCura, so that guy's tenacious. 90 steals for the Charge last year, set a team record, could shoot the ball. Love Kevin Jones over in West Virginia. So, yeah, they would be all homer picks for me. So,
hey, we have someone coming in. Hey, we have a guest. I'm going to invite him. AJ Mahar is coming in. This will be fun. We got AJ coming on. He's going to read us the riot act.
Yeah, so Brian Littman, he says brotherly love, shocking TBT world again and making a run, which I would no doubt think T brother. Like I said, when I was looking at some of the numbers, they've been just a phenomenal team, winning 75% of their games over the past 2 years between Talladega Nights and Team Brotherly Love. So absolutely big fan of Team Brotherly Love.
So AJ's coming on. It's a lifestyle, baby.
Can you guys hear me all right?
We hear you great, buddy. How you doing?
You got to throw the tomatoes at me. Haters got you in, I got you out. We're right on this balance. So
But spiritually, we both have you. Let's be clear.
No, I appreciate you guys doing this. This is a great show, Zoom call or whatever. So I just wanted to pop in and share my 2 cents. And
floor's yours, AJ.
Yeah. So one thing that I think I'm hoping that the committee understands is that a couple of these teams that are on here, for example, I'm not going to name any names, but one of them has about 5 guys that played at a school that has an alumni team that the guys weren't good enough to make the alumni team. So for the team like that to gain entry, to me, would be pretty bizarre. To keep a team out, especially like us who's been in here, for example. Obviously, I'm here to make a case for myself. There's other teams that I can make a case for as well. But
Sure.
It's just, I think it would be bizarre and sad, really, because TBT is open to teams of anyone, right? It's not just an alumni tournament. It's a tournament that should be teams that play together and provide a good product year in and year out. And I think us, along with a few others, have done that. And this year's team, to be honest, there's a few additions that we still have to make that I'm just waiting to get the videos uploaded. I think are game changers for us, and I think it's our best roster we've ever had. So to have a team come together with guys that I've been chasing for 3 and 4 years to try to play, to finally have them on our roster to be left out, it would be pretty sad, right? And that's my feeling.
And it's interesting you mentioned the roster moves, because obviously you're bringing back Holloway and Terica White, and like I've seen you live. I watched you guys live in Brooklyn one year, and like the level of games that Armored Athlete brings, especially that backcourt. I mean, Holloway and White, that's just some dangerous shit. I live in fear of a team facing those guys. So like you have made some moves as usual, obviously.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the toughest parts this year. Some of the TBT history, because obviously your team's your tournament, and have a year without a showtime. Possibly, like I said, I think they're on the bubble as well. The primetime players, you guys. I mean, it's just rich in history and talent, and so that's the tough part about this whole COVID situation and needing to go to 24. But you guys, this is the year I was going to get to see you guys live down in Florida. I had already made my plans to go to Florida and finally get to see Armored Athlete live and, put a kibosh on that. But obviously you guys resilient, hopefully get you guys in, deep team, and show the world, what the Armored Athlete is made of.
Yeah, no, that's the hope, right? And we appreciate that, and we hope that that's how it plays out. And just to to talk about these other teams too. I saw somebody posted a tweet of the Sweet 16 teams from 2015, and there's only a handful of those teams left. So to go away from teams that have been so loyal to put in a product together every year is, and for example, another team is Eberline Drive, right? I see Matt in the comments, but to go from worst to first is their hashtag, right? They've done a great job as well. And it would be a shame to see teams like that and ourselves left out. So we'll see. But anyways, I appreciate you guys having me on, and hopefully things works out in our favor.
Good luck. Yeah, we really want to see you in too. And if we don't, it's purely a numbers game, because Armored Athlete has got a great squad. So this just shows you how difficult that we're even discussing your team getting in. It shows you how hard this year is.
Yeah, no doubt. It's going to be a hard selection. I know that. And again, I'm in agreement with you guys. I don't envy those guys making the decisions.
Such a tough decision.
All right, guys. Appreciate you.
We appreciate you jumping on. Not only you, your whole organization tuning in. I see Brian out there, Jess out there, and like I said, these are the things that make TBT special. Is you're always going to have kind of the top alumni teams and some different things going on, but it's some of these stories that make it fun, and why I've stuck around for, I guess, going on my 5th year TBT fun now.
Yeah,
so appreciate you.
No, of course. Keep your eyes on that Twitter feed. Some good things are coming.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's what's up.
Later, fellas.
See ya, AJ. Thanks for
man.
coming on. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
We'll definitely stay for a few more minutes. Anyone else wants to join too, because AJ made a really good point. The tweet he refers to, by the way, was from friend of the pod, Chris Thomas, Primetime Players. And he mentioned a lot of really great quality teams have done this. So I don't think it's a lack of loyalty. It's just just a horrible numbers game. Armored on talent alone, I think, is easily in a 64. It's not a brainer. At 24, it just gets hard because there's not enough spots. It's like taking a bunch of stuff and trying to fit it into like a size 2 mini dress. It's a disaster. So I don't know. It's tough.
All right. Yeah. So not too many more comments out there. Vinny popped in.
He's gonna kill me. Vinny, don't beat me.
He said he'll be home soon and would love to chat. You know what that means.
Vinny, New York City is, due to all the terrible things happening right now in the world, is under a curfew in 17 minutes. So if you can get here in 17 minutes, we'll talk. You live in New Jersey, so I have a feeling you're not going to. Well, if he gets in, he can definitely call. Actually, if he can get in the next couple of minutes, we have to go to a couple of minutes though. If you got 7 minutes.
Yeah, talk a little bit about Jess and her bracket celebrations and going wild on the bench.
Jess is awesome.
Yeah.
I think she should be allowed in.
She could be the first ever free agent manager. I don't think not enough money in the world would pull her away from sitting on another bench. So, but I think she's a hoot and love seeing her on the Armored Athlete team and chatting a little bit.
Yeah, it's pretty well. By the way, it reminds me, one thing we didn't mention on the teams was I deleted the longer term. And we'll wait for a couple more calls for a couple minutes. Hopefully, Andrew will be patient if we have to go long. But I will say one thing we didn't discuss was Team Hold That. We didn't discuss Team Hold That because there's a lot of teams. Yeah. I'll name some of the teams on our expanded bracket. Like Super Crew definitely was an expanded bracket. They definitely belong. Derek Byers has got a loaded older team, but they're still loaded. There's a bunch of teams that are really, 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 really solid. But Team Hold That's interesting because like they're not eligible. They've got 2 NBA players who should both still be in the league. Big Davey is still an NBA rotation player, and Nate can get fine. But Nate's still fine. But Nate's still a rotation player. Say it true. Nate's still a rotation player. Nate not being in the league is fucked up.
No.
Okay, fine.
Big Three's great. I saw him playing for the Delaware 87ers, man.
Nate?
No. Yeah, he played a little G League time against the Charge. Was that 2 or 3 years ago when he was trying to make his comeback? The Team Hold That thing's interesting. I mean, it's good for Twitter, but no, I don't see him getting into the field. For a couple reasons. I just don't know if they're going to be deep enough with the veteran guys. And at the same time, I just don't know if guys like Glenn Davis and Nate Robinson it's going to, which we didn't talk about too much on this, but there's going to be a lot of rules and regulations that are required in order for you to have a team, and that includes quarantining and testing and a number of things. I just don't know if that's going to happen, but yeah, I'm not getting behind Team Hold That quite yet.
Well, that's the thing, and we wanted to talk about that. Is that I think the talent's there. I think it's clearly the talents don't hold that. But they don't have a full roster. They're not eligible, and we were not putting uneligible rosters that were first-time participants. So we really weren't talking about teams that were first runs. Like the Team Hold That hasn't entered before, and they have talent. I mean, look, we disagree on that. I mean, we can argue Big Baby, that's fine, but I think Nate can still get a bucket in the NBA, no problem. I think that's something he can do. He's 5'9", but he can fucking bounce. So Nate is the kind of guy who would make this more electric. I'd like to see Nate in. I'd like to see Nate play with Team Washington personally. That's my preference. If he's listening, which I assume he's not. You mentioned the other thing too about like having people in quarantine. Like, are you willing to make the sacrifices to be a safe tournament? Like, are you going to be willing to spend a couple weeks in a dorm room somewhere or whatever that ends up being? I mean, are you going to be, hey, I get room service, I get pizza, I get internet, and that's all I get? Like, are guys accustomed to a 5-star NBA hotel going to want to deal with that? Is Floyd Mayweather going to want to deal with that? I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of teams. That's a big point about our bracket. There are teams that we have in who very well might be like, the hell with this. I don't want to deal with the level of sacrifice to be a part of the community this year. That's possible.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And obviously, we're not privy to any of that information at this time. But TBT, obviously, going to be doing a lot of vetting, a lot of crossing the I's, dotting the T's with the GMs and the players. And, so, I'm sure there's got to be one or two teams that are in the top 24 now that we see selection day and be like, what? And I don't know if that's going to be, based on their criteria or someone just wasn't willing to quarantine or, who knows what the case is going to be. But, that's where, I really hope some of the guys that we're pulling for and, fans of slip in there if they're not already in there.
Yeah, Jess just said there's no way Floyd is there. No kidding. He's not going to be there. Yeah. Okay, any closing thoughts? We probably have to prepare for our 8 o'clock taping with Mr. Dakich. Anything you want to say?
No, I think we covered it all. Appreciate everyone tuning in and, participating in the chat. And AJ obviously calling in. That means a lot that you took some time out of your day to join the Zoomcast and, talk about your team. And I think at this point in time, this is probably the last time we will, do a bracketology. I don't know the exact date, but I have to assume the TBT selections are going to be coming down the road not too far from now. And so
I heard they're doing a selection show. Maybe.
Yeah,
I heard they're considering doing a selection
you mentioned
show.
that the other night.
Yeah.
Obviously that's going to be really cool to watch and see how that plays out. But that's probably going to be one of the things we definitely do live. We'll do a kind of reaction show. So once we do the
so if you're still listening and you're a GM that made or didn't make it, want to talk about it, we definitely want you on the show.
We've been telling thing up live, but it's going to be a lot of fun. But it's just appreciate all the listeners. And, like I said, I can't say it enough. This GM population out here just works their tails off and, to put on the show for the fans and, whether they're in or not, it's appreciated.
Okay. I think that's a good closing thought. This is Charge and Hander present Zoom to TDT with our Bracketology 6-4-20, the 2014 Battle Royale signing off.